Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Bruce Feldman has been covering college football for a long time, does a phenomenal job in reading his work for years. And this time of year, college football and the NFL merge quite a bit. And we're happy to have Bruce talk about his NFL Confidential piece. Bruce, welcome to the show. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, obviously, the talk of the town, if you will, right now is CJ Stroud's draft stock. And this S2 score that leaked out, one of the founders of S2 went on Pat McAfee's show and said that the scores were wrong or at least didn't have context. But you talked to a lot of NFL coaches, quarterback coaches, offensive coaches. What is the word around the league right now on Stroud, who everyone thought, I feel like until this weekend, was a lock to go number 2 to Houston?
Yeah, one of the particular quarterback coaches I had talked to for this story, and this was Friday and Saturday for the last two guys. One of the guys I talked to earlier in the week who is a quarterback coach in the league. But this particular one is a veteran guy in the league, and he had said he is a believer in S2, but he added that there's really 4 categories that matter. And he said the overall score doesn't mean anything. So I think he was pointing out probably the same context that the person who Pat McAfee had on, I think, was alluding to. But this particular coach said, I actually had CJ Stroud ahead of Bryce Young until I saw the S2. And this person was like, he was a little leery of it. He said, if we were in the position, meaning at the top of the draft, I'd get him to retake the test. Because I think sometimes that happens. Guys get a false read on a test. But he goes, I do believe in S2, and if you believe in it, and you got plenty of evidence from looking at the scores and the players that you've coached, you don't discount it or deny it. So the other 2 coaches I talked to who were quarterback coaches for this story, they were less beholden to it. In fact, one of the guys I spoke to, whose team might be in the market for a rookie quarterback, had said, it is something that gets your attention, but I look at the film and my experiences of being around CJ and interviewing him, that doesn't line up with what I see on the film in terms of how he processes, how he reacts. It just doesn't seem like he would have scored the way he supposedly scored on the S2. So it's a fascinating window into this. I mean, I was planning on doing this confidential piece. I did not expect the S2 and how it applies to this quarterback class to become such a hot story, but that's the way it's really played out.
Yeah, sometimes those are the breaks for better or for worse. Bruce Feldman with us from The Athletic, college football writer there, national college football insider here on the Hoffman Show. It is interesting to hear that coach say that about Stroud, though. I was taping my podcast this morning with Logan Paulson, who played 10 years in the league and has been grinding the tape for the draft. And he says he does see some of that stuff with Stroud. And part of it, though, is the nature of the offense that he played in, where he has 4 or 5 NFL caliber wide receivers. He's got 3 guys that'll probably be top 90 picks in this draft along his offensive line. And that's conservatively top 90, maybe 3 top 75 picks, depending on where Luke Whippler, their center, goes. So how did kind of coaches balance that in terms of the evaluations of the talent that he was playing with at Ohio State and how hard it is to actually evaluate it because he's got, NFL guys running around him all the time playing in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I mean, one of those QB coaches made a really interesting point. He said it's really the only reservation he has, not in regard to S2, but he said, you look at the receiving core he's had. He goes, he's had Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And this guy said, you're lucky to have one of those guys. Best case, you have 2. He's had 4 or 5 like that. And he said, yes, I like the game tape with the NFL concepts and all the big boy throws. He said, but I would have had conviction if I was ripping the ball if Marvin Harrison Jr. is out there. It's like I threw to some other guys in college who were not that caliber, and you don't feel the same way. And this person made the point, he goes, I think if Aiden O'Connell from Purdue was at Ohio State, I think he throws for 40 touchdowns.
Right, which, is so fascinating. And, we'll see. All of a sudden, Will Levis is the betting favorite to go second in some books, which always makes me perk my ears up. But I'll tell you, Bruce, the guy that I came away reading your story feeling I guess, differently about. I already liked him, but now I'm like super intrigued. Is Anthony Richardson. What did you make of what everyone said about Richardson? Everyone knows about the athleticism, but it seemed like the character is very intriguing to a lot of teams in a positive way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the system he ran, it's not like the Tennessee system, which is Hendon Hooker has, and obviously they had a lot of success, but that's an offshoot of the Bryles offense, and coaches struggle how it translates. There was a lot of motion and shifts that Richardson had to manage, and it was a little more complicated. It was his first year, new coach, first year in the system, and a lot of the people at Florida really speak very highly of him. On top of it, one of the coaches made the point that you look at his performance against Florida State, and yeah, he completed like 35% of his passes. But then he goes, you watch the tape and you see some of the throws. He goes, nobody made a play for him. He makes some really good throws, and they don't make plays on the ball. Another one of the coaches said, look, if you look at what he had working around him, he has probably a late first-round pick at guard, a third-day pick at receiver, maybe a good young freshman running back, but who knows how good that kid is, and that's it. There was nothing else. And you're going up against SEC players. It's not like he's in a lesser conference and he has that caliber of talent around him. So there are people who are just very, very intrigued. Plus, as this point was made to me in the story, you've seen it with Josh Allen, what Brian Daboll did with him at the Bills. You saw it just last year with the Giants and Daniel Jones, how they managed him. You saw it how the Eagles have brought Jalen Hurts along, and he led them to a Super Bowl. I think this is a different era compared to what people used to do with quarterbacks in the transition to the NFL. And you're talking about a guy, and again, this is in the story in The Athletic, who has had more just potential talent in terms of arm talent, athleticism, and size than Anthony Richardson. And nobody could come up with anybody who is quite like that.
Right. He's as big as Cam, basically, with potentially a stronger arm. He's definitively faster. It's nuts. And to hear that, the quote I love, Bruce, from the story is like, he's a good kid who wants to be good. And if he wants to be good and has these physical tools and seems to have a good mental makeup as well, I don't know at that point, as long as he's got the right kind of ecosystem around him, it seems like he might be pretty good.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy people want to roll the dice, and all these coaches want to work with him. But one of the coaches made the point, he goes, I think he has the best private quarterback coach in the country that he's working with. And this person said, I've seen, leaps and bounds improvement. And the coaches themselves say, technique-wise, the arm, they said it's already like pretty clean in terms of some of the stuff you see from him. So it's not like a guy you got to rebuild a lot with it. It's just, I think he's still only 20 years old. I mean, like, that's what I think is so intriguing to all these guys.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't believe that. I actually didn't know that before reading the story, that he's still just 20 years old, one of, I think, 5 or 6 prospects that is expected to go that is that young on draft day. Last thing for Bruce Feldman here, National College Football Insider for The Athletic. You talked about a bunch of other positions in this piece as well, one of them offensive line. And it's been so interesting here in Washington, where we think offensive line could be the pick at 16 or the position at 16, seeing how all over the map people are on these different linemen. Some, tell you Anton Harrison's like a borderline top 10 pick. Other people say not a top 40 player. Same thing with Darnell Wright, Paris Johnson, et cetera, et cetera. What did you make of who you talked to about the offensive line class and the potential for some high-end players to come out of it?
Yeah, not a great group. Paris Johnson, really athletic, probably not the power guy that we've seen come out at the top of the draft. People like Peter Skoronski, but he's probably better suited to be a guard. And then you get some of these other guys. Broderick Jones from Georgia, lots of potential, but he still hasn't played that much. DeJuan Jones from Ohio State is an enormous man. You wonder about his consistency. And, there's some pointed comments that, I have in the story about him. Darnell Wright is a guy that a lot of the coaches I talk to really like as a right tackle. He's nasty. He's big. You watch what he did against Will Anderson, the great defensive lineman at Alabama, and he really neutralized him. I mean, he's definitely one people are really high on.
Yeah, he's super intriguing and one of my favorite guys for potentially here in Washington. Bruce, the story was great. Been reading your work for a long time. Really enjoyed it. Glad that we got you on the show, and hopefully we have an excuse to do it again soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, Bruce Feldman, everybody, National College Football Insider for The Athletic.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.